got to ask, what happened? What happened to the Chiefs this year?
It's so many things. We've, again, so lucky to have had this run with the Chiefs. They have also opened up Kansas City as a where's that to the rest of the world. Taylor Swift certainly helped with that. I was joking for a while when that first started that she's secretly on our payroll to get the word out about Kansas City. But the truth is, there are probably a billion plus people who have said the two words Kansas City together in the last couple years than ever before. So I think it's created well, what's going on there?
You may have noticed, if you're a regular listener, that this podcast has been on hold for a few weeks since the holidays. It's due to a few different personal reasons, but I'm so delighted to be back and to say that from this stretch, from now until the World Cup, we're going to be putting out so much great content, really exploring every facet of the lead up to the World Cup. I guess we can call this season 2. So if you stuck with me, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be back with this first episode back, which is all about a city right in the middle of the country, Kansas City. It was really worth talking about Kansas City because by some accounts, it's the smallest host city, both in terms of population, although different accounts say different things. It might be Atlanta, but also by the measure of probably the least known city from a global perspective and the city with the most to gain from an international perspective as well. So I was really interested in what Kansas City aims to get out of the World Cup in terms of its economic opportunities that it's pursuing in the short term during the tournament and in the long term in terms of being put on the map. So I spoke to Jonathan Knecht, who's the Senior VP of Marketing and Creative at the Kansas City Area Development Council. We had this chat a few weeks ago, but since then, Kansas City has really blown up on the World Cup front. It will not only host Argentina's opening game, but it is also the only city to host 4 team base camps: Argentina, England, the Netherlands, and Algeria. And England are not even playing a single game in Kansas City. At the same time, there was some interesting reporting by Axios the other day that short-term rental prices have increased by 377% in Kansas City year over year. So, and that's the highest of all World Cup host cities, showing that by some measures, Kansas City is the most in-demand city at the moment. What are the reasons that people are attracted to Kansas City right now? And what is Kansas City doing to attract those opportunities? So Jonathan and I talked about all of that. And we also talked about Kansas City barbecue and jazz and the Chiefs and Hallmark cards as well. So again, welcome back. And here's my chat with Jonathan Knecht, who is looking forward to hosting in the only quote unquote true Midwest city of this year's World Cup. Well, Jonathan, great to have you. If you're able to just introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about what you do in your organization.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is Jonathan Knecht. I head the marketing effort for a nonprofit in Kansas City called the Kansas City Area Development Council. We are a regional economic development group that is really charged with attracting business and attracting talented people to come live and have great careers in the Kansas City region. So we kind of represent the big metro area. And I've got a great in-house team here that I work with, and we've got a great group of civic organizations that are working together and excited to host the world here next year.
Awesome. And this is probably one of the things that we'll talk about. But I mean, I think it's probably fair to say Kansas City is one of the less known, if not the least known, host city amongst international visitors. So just to kind of set the scene, I mean, can you give us a sense of KC and its surrounds? Does it straddle 2 states? I was trying to explain that to someone earlier.
It does. So it's a really unique market. It's right in the middle of the country, and we're pretty much split 50-50 with population and GDP in Missouri and Kansas. And there's no natural barrier. There, part of it, the Missouri River will create that state border, but through the heart of the city, it's really a street. and it's called State Line Road. And people go back and forth over that road, technically state barrier every day, and don't think anything about it. So it's a unique market. A lot of, American cities that have straddled state lines, and some of them there are three that will come together in places like Memphis or obviously the tri-state area. But really, what that creates is an economic market, and that's what Kansas City has grown into, and we've really grown into that heart of America, and that goes back 100 years for the way people describe this city. I think being in the center really brings that to life, and then I think it's brought to life really these last 100 years by the people here. It's definitely a geographic melting pot. I mean, you feel a little West Coast culture here. You feel a little East Coast culture here. The different neighborhoods reflect that. So it's a unique spot. And you're right. We're the smallest, by far, smallest host city for the World Cup next year. So we're kind of like the little city that could. And what that reflects is it's going to be a big deal here. It is going to be everywhere, and the whole city is going to be activated. Not to knock our big brother cities like LA and New York, but there may be a few people you bump into there and they will say, World what? Cup what? Oh, is that the soccer match? Oh, yeah. And they won't even say match. They'll say, is that the soccer game? And so here it's going to be a pretty big deal. And in fact, we've been training up people too, in football lingo and using the right terms.
Yeah, is that like a social media thing or just kind of a word of mouth thing?
It's kind of both, and I think we'll really lean into that next year. The organizing committee here, KC26, has already been deep into with FIFA getting all the volunteers lined up. I think we had something like 15,000 applications that they're working through for all of the volunteers that are going to be activated. And I know, knowing your soccer lingo is like training day one for really all of us to host the world here. So it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah. And just to get a bit more of a landscape of the economy in Kansas City. So what are the key industries and are there any kind of major companies that we'd know about?
Yeah. So again, geography plays a big role in what drives Kansas City. And our economic sectors really reflect the U.S. as a whole. So we really don't have, like maybe in the Southwest, you've got a lot of heavy hospitality in your economic mix. Maybe in the traditional Rust Belt, you have a lot of heavy manufacturing. We really have that all balanced out in a pretty unique way. It almost mirrors the way the U.S. is separated by different economic sector, and that we think that's an advantage because you have a lot of stability here. So the highs might not be as high as some of those markets that have sectors that fuel growth. We really reflect more that kind of U.S. from month to month, but then also the lows aren't as low either. But that being said, being in the middle of the country, obviously distribution, logistics, advanced manufacturing. We had Panasonic in the last couple of years announce and then open a huge battery plant here, just outside on the west side in DeSoto, Kansas. That was a big win. A big win we had last year as well was there's a huge fintech company. They process every transaction every day. I mean, trillions in transactions every day. And they're going to be building a regional fintech hub here next year. So we have some traditional brands that you might not know are based in Kansas City. Hallmark cards. I think Kansas City, Hallmark is now owning Christmas. And so we have Hallmark based here, going back 100 plus years, which has really fueled a lot of creative, cool, artistic people that have raised families here over 100 years and really has given us a cool, I think, creative culture. I think we owe a lot of that to Hallmark. Another big brand name you might know is Garmin. Garmin's really gotten into the sports tech, wearable tech.
Oh, yeah.
They've got a huge campus in Olathe, Kansas, on the southwest side of our market. So we've got some big brand names, but our advantages really still go back to being in the center of the country, being able to move goods back and forth all around the country. But in addition to that, I'd say digital health and animal health. We've got a lot of advantages there. And then we have amazing architecture, engineering, and construction firms here. A lot of people don't know most of the stadiums that a lot of these matches are going to be held in. I think it's like 14 of the 17 were designed with some hand from a Kansas City company. There's a huge firm
Wow.
named Populous here, but also HOK and AECOM, and just an amazing wealth of sports architecture here. So sports designing and hosting people for matches is something Kansas City's been a part of. If not directly here, people here have been a part of that all over the world for years.
That's a great bit of trivia to know that Hallmark is a Kansas City company. I did not know that. When you're thinking about your economic opportunities from the World Cup, are you thinking more about attracting business short term during the tournament, or kind of long lasting economic development once the party's left?
Yeah, I think definitely both. Our focus at our organization is really those long-term relationships, and we see this opportunity to spotlight Kansas City and introduce Kansas City to a lot of new eyes and new folks that make big decisions that expand and move businesses around the world. We have a lot of companies here that have parent companies, back around the world. Like I mentioned, Panasonic coming from Japan recently. There's a large animal health company on the north end of our metro based up there, Boehringer Ingelheim, which is a German-based company. So we have a lot of kind of global companies here. And of course, as companies have merged over the years globally, Kansas City is definitely an outpost for many of them. But to your point earlier, we're a small market. This is a huge opportunity. There will be short-term gains, and I know that our organized committee at KC26 and our tourism and convention group, which is called Visit KC, they are very active, as well as our chamber, in making sure all of our small businesses are going to be able to create amazing hospitality for the hosts, and that is going to create that short-term economic impact. That's a huge, huge, exciting part of it. And everyone plays a different position. Our group at the Area Development Council is going to be hey, let's establish these relationships that people are going to want to dig deeper into Kansas City and see what sort of long-term opportunities are here.
At this point, the draws happened, and you now know which teams you're going to be hosting. And so you're going to have a real mix of kind of some of the powerhouses like Argentina, Netherlands, right down to, I don't like the word minnows, but some of the, maybe the underdogs, like Tunisia
Sure.
and Curacao and Algeria. So in terms of prepping strategically for long-term business investment, how has now knowing the teams that you're going to be hosting changed? Has it changed the way you're approaching things?
Well, I can just tell you, Kansas City was absolutely thrilled to learn that we're going to have the defending champs and Messi here on June 16th. Argentina was really, I think, on everyone's wish list to play
Yeah.
in their stadiums. So we are thrilled with that. All the countries are going to be amazing, and you're right, it does give us a lot of entree into those countries. I know there's been a lot of engagement, certainly with our tourism groups and with KC26, and how we're going to be able to host them incredibly well. Again, I think being based in the center of the country gives us a real advantage. It'll be hot here. This will be a good place to get trained for good summer American heat. So I think we have heard over the last couple of years that this would be a great spot for some of the teams to base.
But I suppose in thinking of your economic opportunities, does now knowing those teams, does that change the calculus at all, or is it kind of the same strategy as you're expecting?
It's the same strategy. Obviously, we'll have more direct contact with these countries and be able to make sure that they take the trip to Kansas City. There's so many choices where you're going to see your matches. The World Cup
Yeah.
fan base is amazing. When we were announced as a host city, I was lucky enough to go to Qatar and see the World Cup in action, see how countries show up, the people from the countries, the fans show up, and it is an absolutely amazing experience. And it's kind of like you kind of feel like Chicken Little a little bit when you come back and tell everyone from Kansas City who doesn't know, you guys, you don't realize how big this is going to be, because you don't know until you experience it. So I think that knowing those countries is great. I think every market's excited and are all actively reaching out to engage as many of those folks to come to our markets. I know there have been a couple local stories that highlight all the restaurants in Kansas City that feature food from all of these different parts of the world and making sure they're high up on the list. So is, to your point, that, where am I going to get the best Argentinian meal in Kansas City? So all of those sorts of stories are starting to get written. It'll be exciting.
Yeah. And if I've read the schedule correctly, I think if Portugal top their group, they might end up playing a knockout match in Kansas City. So you could have Messi and Ronaldo at some point.
Exactly. Yes, that calculus is unbelievable, and that would be, an epic all-time attraction. And if we get the chance, if it plays out right, to host that, it'll be amazing.
So, in terms of kind of shorter term, small businesses trying to get involved in the World Cup in some way, I know, the KC hosting website has a small business readiness assessment process for vendors or services or businesses that want to get involved. Everything I see from golf carts to printing to lighting. I mean, a lot of things that I haven't even thought about. Are you able to tell me a little bit more about that process of how small businesses can get involved?
Well, so that has primarily been led by KC26 and our friends at our Chamber of Commerce here to really get out, share kind of the playbook of what those opportunities look like, and then how they can get directly involved. FIFA's footprint will be around our stadium, and then it'll be around the Fan Fest, which will be a huge free affair. So around those footprints, of course, FIFA has to play a pretty direct role with that, like the volunteers and how folks can get involved. Beyond that, there's a lot to share of how they can host folks, certainly in the hospitality side of things, our hotels, our restaurants, all of that direct hosting hospitality and all of that economic impact. To my point earlier, getting people to get their mind into what soccer is all about if they don't know. The good news is Kansas City's really, really become a hotbed for soccer. Certainly these last 10 years, our Sporting KC has really got an incredibly loyal fan base with their Blue Cauldron, and it really developed a strong fan base. We have kind of a central entertainment hub in our downtown, and it just rocks when there are big sporting events in the soccer world. And then additionally, we have our new women's team that had an amazing year this last year, the KC Current, and the first ever stadium built for a women's sports team in America, for the KC Current. And I think a lot of soccer fans coming from around the world are going to want to see that stadium. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've never been to the city myself, but I've heard a lot of good things. A lot of good things about the barbecue too. So
The barbecue, all of it, it is kind of our old riff in Kansas City is barbecue and jazz. Now these days it's barbecue, jazz, the Chiefs, Sporting, the Current, our Royals. This is a sports town. We like to cook meat and cheer on sports. It's really what we love to do.
right, right. It's less catchy now with all those teams in it, but that's
That's
okay.
right. We're very lucky to have such a rich sports market. It makes it fun. It does give a lot of team spirit to people in Kansas City. It does create kind of I don't know, I don't want to be too corny about it, but it does give a really, heartfelt feeling to being here.
Well, I mean, you touched on the Chiefs. I got to ask, what happened? What happened to the Chiefs this year?
It's so many things. We've again so lucky to have had this run with the Chiefs. They have also opened up Kansas City as where's that to the rest of the world. Taylor Swift certainly helped with that. I like to say, I was joking for a while when that first started that she's secretly on our payroll, that to get the word out about Kansas City. But the truth is, there are probably a billion plus people who have said the two words Kansas City together in the last couple years than ever before. So I think it's created what's going on there? What's the deal there? I think it's incredibly perfect timing with the Chiefs' success these last 6-7 years, the recent buzz around Taylor and Travis has really helped the world be like, what, I got to see what's going on in Kansas City. So the World Cup to come right now is incredible. I can also tell you that, the Ted Lasso crews were around here a year ago, or I guess last
Oh
summer.
yeah.
So I think the timing of that is supposed to uh, precede maybe a little bit. I don't know exactly when it's going to release, and I know part of that will take place in Kansas City. So I'm not giving out any secrets. That again will be another way that we are kind of getting in the spotlight. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do have the data, but I suppose it's hard to make a correlation directly between the success of the Chiefs and the Taylor effect and visits to Kansas City and economic development in Kansas City. But I mean, is there a correlation you've seen there?
There is, in fact, we had several articles written certainly around these last couple of Super Bowls, the Taylor effect. And as we talked about earlier, there's that short-term impact, which was pretty direct. A lot of the stores and restaurants that Taylor has visited saw immense traffic and excitement around what they're offering in Kansas City. But as I was alluding to, that long-term effect, again, hard to calculate, but the fact that people are hearing about Kansas City, and those lead to questions, especially for us amongst young people, when cities kind of find their way into pop culture and there's a spotlight, it tends to attract people to say, hey, I want to check that out. Hey, I'm graduating college somewhere in the Midwest. Oh gosh, I see about these opportunities in Kansas City. I'm hearing about Kansas City. I should check that out. So we've had a really steady population growth these last 10 years. I think that our next 10 years will be even stronger. We are building lots of apartment and condo districts. Kansas City is, and not blowing up like a lot of cities in America have done over the years. I think we've got a really good, steady clip of growth. And, all of these exciting spotlights that shine on us, whether it's the Chiefs and Taylor. The World Cup's going to be an absolutely huge one. So we're lucky we've got this. We've got good winds right now, so to speak, and we've got to make the most of it. We've got to really find a way to build momentum out of that and keep the growth going.
Is it somewhat frustrating, because it sounds really exciting, but is it somewhat frustrating that U.S. immigration policy at the moment is making it difficult to know what the exact number of tourists coming in is going to be, especially for the businesses that you talk about that are trying to get involved and maybe might not know the demand that they're going to be seeing?
I think absolutely. It's just a little unfortunate that with this great moment where we're hosting the world, there is kind of this trepidation and concern. So how much of a chill that puts on the numbers that are going to visit not just Kansas City, but all of our countries, I don't think we know. Um, no one's excited about that. We would love to just have confidence and certainty and knowing that we're all going to be inviting the world and celebrating together. That's the one thing I can tell you when I was in Qatar that was fantastic. And, there's kind of the flip side of it. I'm going from Kansas City to Doha, and I don't know what to expect there, but the whole process of visiting there couldn't have been easier. It was kind of red carpeted throughout the typical visa aspects and traveling around the city. I know that regardless of whatever red tape and bureaucracy may be kind of looming around next year, I also know that the processes are going to be in place for the people that are coming. It'll be a fantastic experience. So I do feel like those folks that are coming are going to have a great time, and hopefully most people are going to stick to the plan and get excited to come to the States
Right.
and Canada
Yeah.
and Mexico. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a whole continental hosting situation, and you just want that to be as open and as comfortable for everyone as it can be.
Yeah, yeah. Qatar red carpet, US red tape. That sounds like one way
Yeah,
of looking at it, at the way things are looking.
yeah.
Just one more bit of a downer question, and then we'll get back to kind of the excitement. The ticket prices are looking really outrageous, and that's again putting off a lot of people, both international visitors and locals who might not be able to enjoy something they've been looking forward to for years. What, again, what effect do you foresee that in Kansas City as it's looking to attract domestic and international visitors? But I suppose is the flip side that, I mean, I don't know this, but I would think that given the price, corporate is going to snap up a lot of these tickets and maybe make networking and things like that a little bit easier, which is not exactly the spirit of the World Cup, but is that at least some sort of a silver lining?
I think so. I know from talking with our folks at KC26 and knowing how the tickets have been rolling out now. Obviously, there's a huge focus on corporate sponsorships and suites, but my understanding is the intention is to have affordable, available tickets for folks. I can't remember exactly what the number was, but I thought I saw like at least some tickets available in Kansas City that started at like $66 or something like that, which,
Yeah.
obviously at the high end, the VIP experiences are a whole other level. That's going to happen in all of the host cities, and that's a big part of how this gets pulled off. But I hope there's as many opportunities for anyone to go. FanFest is free, of course. I always have said these last couple of years, if being one of the only Midwest cities, if the only true Midwest cities, I would think that families that are into soccer, that parents are the coaches, and they're driving around kids with soccer balls year long, and if they're in Minneapolis, Denver, St. Louis, Nashville, that they're going to trek out here to Kansas City. They're going to check out FanFest. Hopefully they can afford to go to some games. Hopefully they can get, the Messi jersey at the FanFest with the appropriate World Cup patch 26. And so all of those availabilities, I think, from the family driving in the Midwest all the way up to the corporate high rollers that are going to be flying in from whatever country. Hopefully, we're going to host them at all levels, and it'll be great.
How do you see success in terms of, Kansas City as a host? I mean, I suppose if one of the goals is long-term economic development, it's maybe hard to measure, but are there any specific metrics you're looking at that will let you know, oh, hey, we did a great job?
Yeah, so I think, like I've mentioned, Kansas City Area Development Council, from our lens as, responsible for that long-term economic development, we really are taking a next level approach for us. We're going to be creating, in partnership with KC26, a kind of a high-end hospitality venue, a space where when we host folks from around the world, that may be that mix of corporate decision makers, consultants who help move stuff around the country and around the world, dignitaries from these countries, that we have a place where they can not just see Kansas City, but meet Kansas City. So we've created something called KC House. And, we've heard about those around big sporting events like the Olympics over the years, a Nike House or what have you. So we kind of are taking a page out of that strategy. And, we do need to step up. I think a lot of these VIP hosting venues, those exist and have for years in places like Atlanta and Dallas and New York and LA. And we really need that place where match day, the night before the matches, that we've got an opportunity for them to learn more about Kansas City, meet business leaders from Kansas City, meet civic leaders from Kansas City, and hear the story in person, what this place is all about. They're going to get out and see it. They're going to go to our Green Lady Lounge Jazz Club. They're going to go to our Joe's KC and try the burnt ends. They're gonna experience Kansas City, but in between that, we need a hosting environment to really show people what we've got going on here. And the best way to do that is to meet us and talk to us. So we're excited about creating that. So success for us will be making sure we really maximize that hosting environment, maximize all of the visitors that are going to come. We're directly inviting our A-list group of targets. Again, and that's about moving businesses to Kansas City. And I think that we'll be able to look back after this and really follow up with an amazing list of prospects for the future to come back to Kansas City. And hopefully there'll be future KC houses at future events. in Kansas City. I know we're shooting for the Rugby World Cup and Women's World
Mm.
Cup, and we're gonna stay active as a global site for sports, and hopefully that means for business too.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, football comes to America, and then rugby comes to America, huh?
Yeah.
Exciting. Well, you had me at burnt ends. So,
Well,
um,
you've got to come
well,
have them.
yeah, no, I do have to. I've spent a little bit of time in Texas and had their barbecue, so I think it's only fair that I compare the two.
It's only fair. You're invited. Come on, pick your match. Let's go.
Exciting. Were there any final words? Anything you wanted to talk about?
I just think at the end of the day, hey, Kansas City's ready. We're excited. This is a once in a multi-lifetime opportunity, and we're excited for soccer world to come. I've been around soccer world a long time. My sister was an All-American goalkeeper back in the 90s.
Huh.
So I've been around soccer. A lot of folks might think, oh, you just play baseball and football in Kansas City. And no, this city loves soccer. The youth leagues around here, it's really dug into our culture here, and I'm excited to see that really blow up next year. It's gonna be awesome. So please come find a way to visit and do a podcast from Kansas City.
Oh yeah, that would be fun. Yeah. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it having me on. Good talking with you.